They told me every story has a beginning and an end, but that isn't true. Some stories don't end, they just sink beneath the surface, waiting for someone foolish enough to listen. My name doesn't matter anymore. What matters is what I saw and what I helped create. Years ago, I was taken from a normal life and thrown into a place that didn't officially exist. A hospital in the middle of nowhere. A glass building standing in the heart of a dying jungle. They said it was for research, a humanitarian project. But I learned fast that we weren't saving anyone. We were dissecting something sacred. This isn't a story about ghosts or demons or things that go bump in the night. It's about what happens when human curiosity becomes a religion, when science reaches out to touch the divine and forgets to pull back. I've held on to this confession for years, wondering whether to destroy it or release it. But silence feels worse than guilt. So if you're hearing my voice, now understand one thing. I'm not asking you to believe me. I just want you to listen. Because once you hear the truth, you can't unhear it. And once you see what we saw in that jungle, you'll understand why some doors should never be opened. It began with a black bag over my head. I remember the smell, first rubber and sweat, the tang of my own breath pressed back into my face. Hands grabbed me from behind, rough and certain. 6 or 7 men, maybe more. Someone shouted something I didn't understand. And before I could ask, a gun barrel touched the back of my neck. That was enough to stop all questions. I was halfway home from work. My phone was still in my pocket. The street was bright, full of noise. Nobody helped me. I don't even think anyone saw. They moved fast, practiced. I was thrown into the back of a van that smelled like gasoline and wet canvas. One of them whispered near my ear, calm, as if reading a grocery list. If you don't listen, your family dies. Until that moment, torture was a word from history books, a thing that happened to people in faraway places. Now it was a promise made inches from my skin. I tried to count the turns the van made, how long it drove, but time folded in on itself. When it stopped, they dragged me out, and the sound of rotors filled the air. A helicopter. The bag over my head grew hot and damp as I breathed. The smell of oil and jungle mud mixed together. When they tore it off, the light hurt. We were standing in a clearing that looked carved out of the world. Beyond it, trees rose like dark teeth. The men were faceless behind black masks. One of them pointed to the helicopter and said, "Welcome to your new assignment." I asked where we were. No one answered. The flight lasted hours. The sky below us turned from blue to black. Somewhere in the distance, lightning flickered behind clouds. I tried to talk to reason, to beg. A man across from me only shook his head once slow, like he pitied me. When the helicopter finally landed, I stepped onto mud that swallowed my shoes. The air was heavy, wet, filled with the whine of unseen insects. Through the mist, I saw a cluster of huts, an abandoned village maybe, and above them, rising like something that shouldn't exist, stood a building of glass and steel. A hospital, 3 stories high, glowing faintly against the jungle night. That was my first glimpse of the place that would erase me. They pushed me through the mud until I stood before the glass doors. Inside, the air was sterile and cold. A voice echoed somewhere deeper in the corridors, distorted through speakers. "Welcome, doctor. You've arrived at last." I told them there had been a mistake. I wasn't who they thought I was. They ignored me. The next moment, I saw something that broke whatever logic. I had left a nameplate. On an office door, my name etched in glass. Dr. Michael Lang, head of research. The letters looked permanent, as if I'd worked there for years. Inside the office was a desk, a lamp, a stack of files labeled Project Messiah. My hand shook as I opened the first folder. It contained photographs of a man, at least I think he was a man, lying on a slab. His chest was open, and inside, instead of organs, there was light. Blinding white, caught mid-breath by the camera. I asked one of the guards what this was. He told me quietly, "It's what we found in him. We need you to study it." I asked why me. He didn't answer. They left me there. The door clicked shut behind them, and I realized it locked from the outside. That night, I didn't sleep. The jungle outside the glass whispered like static. I stared at the photographs until I could almost feel heat rising from the paper. There was something in that man's chest, a spark, a wound, a hole in reality. Whatever it was, it looked alive. By morning, I'd stopped thinking about escape. They'd given me a team. Lab coats, clipboards, all of them, speaking in low, efficient tones. None of them would meet my eyes. When I asked where we were, one of the technicians said, "South Pacific maybe." It doesn't matter. We're off, every map. That day I saw the body for the first time. He lay in a glass chamber at the center of the hospital, preserved in a liquid that shimmered faintly like mercury. His face was peaceful, almost kind. But where his heart should have been, there was a brightness so pure it hurt to look at directly. It pulsed slowly, like breathing. Someone whispered, "They call him the Messiah." I should have refused. I should have screamed. Instead, I stared. Because what I saw inside that chamber was not science. It was divinity, caged in steel. The experiments began within 24 hours. We weren't told where the body came from. Only that it had survived death. That it regenerated even after being burned, cut, and drowned. It was found in a crater, they said, surrounded by ash and glass. No plane, no debris, just him. My job was to measure the impossible. At first, I was careful. I took samples, logged readings, kept the tone clinical. But the numbers made no sense. Cells that didn't decay. Tissue that emitted radiation like sunlight through a prism. Under the microscope, everything pulsed with microscopic halos, as if each particle remembered being alive. That was when the dreams began. I dreamed of light spilling through cracks in the world of a voice, whispering beneath the hum of the machines. The voice didn't use words. It pressed ideas straight into my skull. You wanted truth. Here it is. I woke each morning with tears on my face and no memory of why. After the third day, one of the nurses refused to enter the chamber. She said she'd seen the body move just slightly, its head turning toward her eyes, open, smiling. They found her later that night, kneeling in the corridor, both hands bleeding. She'd written something over and over on the wall in her own blood. "He forgives us." They removed her quietly. No one spoke about it again. I told myself it was hysteria, isolation. But when I returned to the lab, I saw condensation on the inside of the glass chamber, as if someone had breathed from within. I remember touching the surface. It was warm. That warmth crawled up my arm and settled behind my eyes. For a moment, the room around me vanished, and I saw something else. A vast expanse of white, and a figure walking away from me, barefoot, leaving no footprints. When I came back to myself, an hour had passed. That was the first time I heard the heartbeat. It wasn't mine. It came from the chamber, slow, deliberate, like a drum heard underwater. Each beat seemed to echo through the walls, through the wires, through my ribs. After that, none of us could pretend anymore. Whatever lay on that slab wasn't dead. It was waiting. We cut deeper. Every incision revealed more light, more heat. Instruments malfunctioned metal, warped recordings played backward. A technician vomited black bile onto the floor and whispered something about angels with knives for wings. Another locked himself in the morgue freezer, claiming he could hear hymns rising from the vents. Command replaced the dead as quickly as they fell. Fresh researchers arrived each morning. I stopped learning their names. They rarely lasted long. The guards didn't wear insignia. They didn't speak unless spoken to. When one of them caught my eye in the cafeteria, I thought he looked afraid. I started writing notes to myself on scrap paper, afraid my thoughts would vanish between sleep and waking. The last one I wrote before everything changed read, "He's not a man. He's a door." By the end of the second week, the chamber glass began to crack from within. The sound was faint at first, like ice thawing in spring. Then one morning, we entered the lab to find the entire surface webbed with fractures. The light inside had dimmed, condensed to a single trembling core the size of a heart. We were told to continue. Dr. Coates arrived that afternoon. I'd heard his name before, a specialist in theoretical biology, eccentric, brilliant, unstable. He shook my hand with fingers cold as glass and said, "I've read your notes. You're lucky, doctor. You've seen the face of God." I tried to laugh, but he didn't. He set up his own lab in the lower levels. He worked alone, long hours, never ate with us. Some nights, I'd see his light still on past midnight shadows, moving strangely against the walls. Then came the first autopsy. We opened the chest again under Coates' supervision. The light flared so bright, it filled the entire room. And for a moment, all of us felt weightless, like falling upward. Instruments lifted from the tables, papers burned to ash midair. When it ended, the Messiah's eyes were open. They were not human eyes. They looked like reflections of stars on black water. We closed the chamber, sealed it, and pretended none of it happened. But that night, the entire facility lost power for 12 minutes. When the lights returned, every clock had stopped at 3:03 a.m. Inside the chamber, the cracks were gone. The glass was whole again, and the body was smiling. After the night of the blackout, Dr. Coates stopped pretending to be sane. He hardly spoke to anyone. When he did, it was to ask for more organic matter. He wanted plants, animals, sometimes tissue from human cadavers shipped in sealed crates. The requests came through channels I didn't recognize, no signatures, no oversight. He was being fed by something above us, something higher than command. I went to see him on the lower level, 2 weeks after his arrival. The hallway leading to his lab smelled of rust and mold. The metal walls dripped with condensation, even though the air was cold. I knocked. No answer. When I tried the handle, the door slid open with a hiss. Inside was a clutter of glass tanks and notebooks. Every surface crawled with growths, white threads like fungal roots spreading across instruments and wires. Coates stood in the middle of it, all barefoot, muttering. He was writing equations directly on the walls in black marker, but the symbols weren't mathematical anymore. They twisted into shapes that looked almost alive. He turned when he heard me. His eyes had lost their color, pale gray, as if bleached. "Do you hear it?" he asked. "Hear what?" "The hum beneath everything. It's language, but we can't pronounce it. Not with these mouths." He smiled, and I saw that his gums were bleeding. I told him he needed rest. He laughed so softly, I almost didn't notice. Rest when divinity has entered the petri dish. We're dissecting God. Michael, how do you sleep through that? I left before he could finish. The next morning, I filed a report. It went unanswered. The first deaths after the blackout came quietly. A pair of janitors vanished on night rotation. Their keycards kept pinging on sensors as if they were walking through locked corridors. When we checked the logs, the times made no sense. One of the readings was dated for the following week. Soon after, a lab assistant collapsed mid-procedure. She convulsed, gasping, and her veins bulged black beneath her skin. When we opened her up, God forgive us, the tissue inside was budding. Tiny white nodes, like seeds, sprouted through the muscle. Coates called them embryonic sermons. He said the organism was trying to communicate. We sealed off the lower level. Command issued new orders, total sterilization. Everything below Section C would be purged. But before we could initiate the burn protocol, the ventilation alarms began to wail. Pressure in the ducts dropped, then spiked. Something was spreading. By the time the security gates closed, half the staff on level C were coughing blood. The air shimmered with a faint golden haze. I watched through a monitor as people clutched their throats and fell. The feed turned static for a second, then came back. They weren't moving anymore, but the haze around them pulsed as if breathing. Coates refused evacuation. He stood inside the lab, arms raised, speaking to something we couldn't see. His microphone was still on. We heard every word. "It's not a toxin," he said. "It's a translation. The body converts truth faster than the mind." Then he inhaled deeply, smiled, and whispered, "I see him." The feed cut to black. For 72 hours, Level C was sealed. We thought everyone inside was dead. Automated drones were sent to assess contamination. The cameras they carried showed still bodies, black stains on the floor. Fungal threads crawling like slow veins along the walls. On the fourth day, the power grid flickered again. Systems rebooted on their own. Every monitor across the facility displayed a single line of text: "We love you." No source, no sender. We decided to go down, not out of courage orders. The samples stored below were too valuable to lose. I led the inspection team, 4 soldiers, 2 scientists. We wore full containment suits. As the elevator descended, the temperature dropped sharply. The smell hit first sweet rot, like fruit left to die in the sun. The doors opened to red emergency lights and silence. We stepped into what had once been a laboratory. Tables overturned, glass shattered. The air was thick, damp, glittering with particles that caught the light like dust motes. Our boots left deep impressions in a layer of black residue covering the floor. We found Coates' workspace halfway down the corridor. The door was half-melted edges fused into the frame. Inside, a mass of fungal tissue clung to one wall, thick cords and petals, pale as candle wax, quivering as if in rhythm with breath. One of the soldiers muttered, "Jesus." The thing pulsed, and we all froze. At its base lay Coates' ID badge. I reached for it, but as my glove brushed the edge of the growth, the Geiger counter on my belt screamed. The entire surface lit from within a glow that wasn't light, but awareness. For a heartbeat, I felt something look back at me. "We're leaving," I said. "Now." Then a noise behind us made us turn. The bodies. The ones we'd stepped over on the way in, they were no longer still. Fingers twitched, jaws flexed. Eyes opened, filmed with milky white. One of them whispered, barely audible. Through the static in our radios, Do not fear. The soldiers opened fire. Bullets tore through flesh that didn't bleed. The figures only twitched, convulsed, and then went still again, collapsing in unnatural poses. I remember my breathing loud in the helmet, my pulse hammering. Move, I shouted, but one of the men stood staring at the wall. The fungal mass had begun to split open. Inside, something was moving. At first, I thought it was gas escaping a ripple of air, but then it pushed forward, tearing free, wet, slow, deliberate. Dr. Coates emerged from within, covered in the same white growth skin, glistening like wax. His clothes fused to his body, his face half dissolved, yet recognizably him. He smiled, with two mouths, one where it should be another stretched across his chest. There are other gardens, he said, his voice, a vibration rather than sound. But not for you. One of the soldiers screamed and fired point blank. The rounds punched holes through coats. Yet no blood came, only light spilling in ribbons. It touched the gunman's visor, and he fell backward, convulsing. I grabbed the detonator from my belt, slapped charges on the lab door, and dragged the last living soldier with me. As we fled, Coates's voice followed not through the air, but inside our heads, a warm whisper. He loves you, in spite of everything. We reached the elevator. The soldier beside me trembled, his rifle clattering. What the hell was that? I didn't answer. My thumb hovered over the trigger. Before the doors closed, I looked back once more. Coates stood in the corridor, arms outstretched, light blooming from the holes in his body. We love you, he said again. I hit the detonator. The explosion rolled through the facility like thunder. The blast doors slammed shut above us. The elevator lurched, then halted between levels. The lights flickered and died. For a long moment, there was nothing. No sound, no movement. Only the faint echo of his words burning behind my eyes. When we finally forced the elevator doors open, smoke poured out. The soldier with me coughed blood into his mask. We climbed the shaft by hand, scraping against the steel until we reached a maintenance hatch. Above us, the rest of the facility was chaos. Alarms blared, though half the speakers were dead. Red lights spun through corridors filled with bodies, guards, researchers, people I'd spoken to hours before. Some had been shot. Others looked drowned, their lungs filled with something black and oily. I stumbled into the cafeteria and nearly fell. Dozens of them sat upright at tables, perfectly still, eyes open, smiling faintly. Every one of them mouthed the same phrase without sound. We love you. The surviving guards were trying to organize an evacuation, but they couldn't agree on who was in command. The radios played nothing but static. Someone shouted that the upper decks were sealed from the inside. I remember grabbing a sergeant by the vest. Burn it, I said. All of it. He looked at me like I was mad. Maybe I was. We made it to the surface hours later. The jungle was on fire, where debris from the explosion had broken through. The sky glowed orange. I saw figures moving between the trees, charred, limping, yet still walking. They didn't burn right. Even after the flames touched them, they only shone brighter. At dawn, I stood on the landing pad, watching helicopters circle overhead. They never landed. Orders came through loud and clear at last. Containment level Omega. All personnel to be terminated or isolated. I was one of the few they left alive because I was useful, because I'd seen too much. They handed me a form to sign, promising silence. I signed. What else could I do? Before they sealed the area, I looked once more toward the smoldering ruins of the hospital. Through the smoke, I swore I saw him, coats standing among the flames, unburned hands raised as if in benediction. He wasn't smiling anymore. He looked sad. That night, they evacuated me to a temporary base miles away. I was given a new identity, new files, a new nameplate for a desk I never sat at. They told me the project was over the site, destroyed. But when I closed my eyes, I could still feel the heartbeat in the walls. I never left. They told me I'd been relocated, that the jungle was sealed, the coordinates wiped from every record. But when I woke in the new facility, I knew it was the same place. The air still carried that faint metallic sweetness. The hum in the walls still pulsed like a heartbeat. They'd rebuilt on the ashes. The new staff arrived under different titles: environmental containment, post-incident remediation. None of them knew what had happened here. I was told my role was to monitor structural integrity on the lower levels. No mention of Project Messiah, no mention of codes. But every night, the same whisper seeped through the ventilation. "We love you." At first, I thought it was tinnitus, some leftover ringing from the blast. Then one evening, I turned off every machine in my office, and the whisper grew louder in the silence. It wasn't coming from inside my head. It was moving through the pipes like air being pushed by breath. I recorded it once. The waveform on my screen pulsed with the same rhythm as a human heart. When I played it backward, the words changed. Not "we love you," something older, a phrase I couldn't translate. That was when I stopped sleeping near the vents. Months passed, though time here never felt right. The clocks drifted forward and back, and sunlight through the reinforced windows carried a red tint, as if the jungle canopy outside had thickened to blood. The higher-ups told me everything below. Sub-level 1 was sealed forever, but sensors kept detecting movement. Faint heat signatures, scratches on steel. Sometimes at night, the elevator would move on its own doors, opening to empty air before shutting again. Eventually, curiosity won, or maybe guilt. I told myself I had to confirm that nothing living remained below. But the truth is, I needed to see him again. I forced the old codes into the elevator panel. It protested, then obeyed. The descent was slow, like sinking into a dream. The lights flickered between red and black, and for the first time in months, I smelled the jungle's rot again, only denser older. When the doors opened, a gust of air escaped, dry and cold. The corridor beyond looked frozen in time. Equipment lay exactly where it had fallen, but the surfaces gleamed as though coated in glass. I stepped carefully, the echo of my boots swallowed by the dark. Then I saw them. The soldiers, the researchers, hundreds of them hanging from the ceiling by thin cords of hardened fungus. They swayed slightly motionless, but not stiff eyes open and moist, as if alive. The walls behind them pulsed with faint veins of light, each body connected to the others by the same roots that held them aloft. The Hall of Bodies. That's what my mind called it, though I never spoke the words aloud. I should have turned back. Instead, I walked deeper. Every few steps, one of the bodies brushed against my shoulder. The touch was cold wet. I tried not to look at their faces, but I kept catching glimpses, people I recognized. The nurse who wrote prayers in blood. The guard who'd smoked with me on the roof. Their lips trembled as I passed whispering breathless fragments. "Do not be afraid. It hurts. He loves you." Their voices overlapped until it became one long, shivering chorus. I covered my ears, but the sound lived inside the bone. I reached the far end of the corridor, where a vault door waited sealed by rust and ash. Across its surface, someone or something had carved a sentence into the metal. The letters were crude, done by hand. "We are still here." My knees weakened. I remember pressing my palm to the door, whispering that I was sorry. The metal was warm, and from behind it came a single knock. Soft, patient. I ran. The tunnels seemed to stretch endlessly as I stumbled back through the hanging dead, their fingers grazing my skin, their whispers turning to laughter or sobbing. I couldn't tell the difference anymore. When the elevator doors finally closed, one last voice hissed through the crack before sealing shut. "We're waiting." After that, I refused to go below ground. I barricaded myself in the upper offices. There's still power, still food, still water enough for years. Maybe that was the plan all along. Keep one survivor to bear witness. I don't dream anymore. I just remember. Sometimes through the reinforced glass, I see movement in the jungle. The vines climb higher each day, twisting around the building's frame, pulsing faintly, like veins under skin. They form words, now shapes, that spell my name when the wind blows through them. I keep the curtains drawn. Last week, the mainframe reconnected itself. No one's supposed to be left to do that. But the monitors lit up anyway, displaying old camera feeds from the lowest level. Static at first, then faint images, the vault door I had touched, now open. Inside, light spilled like a sunrise, and something moved through it, slow, deliberate, almost human. I shut off the screens. They turned themselves back on. The voice followed soon after, through every speaker, soft and kind. "Michael, you can come down now." I hadn't told anyone my name in years. I tried to destroy the servers. I even considered burning the entire upper floor. But when I lifted the lighter, the air shimmered and pressed against my skin like a hand. It wasn't stopping me. It was pleading. I whispered, "What do you want?" The reply came inside my chest rather than my ears. "To forgive you." I dropped the lighter. That night, I dreamed of the chamber again, the first day I saw him. Only this time, the glass wasn't between us. I stood where the Messiah had lain, the instruments above me, humming like a choir. Coates was beside me, whole and smiling. He leaned close and whispered, "It was never punishment. It was love." When I woke, the air tasted of salt and iron. My arms ached. I found marks on my skin, circular burns, evenly spaced, as if from small suction cups. They pulsed faintly with light. I don't know how long I've been here now. The sky outside has turned permanently gray. Birds no longer fly overhead. Sometimes I hear them singing from the jungle floor. Instead, voices that sound almost human. There's movement in the courtyard forms, crawling up from the soil, wrapped in white filaments. They look like statues at first, until they begin to breathe. One of them lifted its head today and looked straight at me through the window. It had Coates's face. He mouthed the words, "We love you." I keep thinking about what the Third Testament might actually say. We call it scripture because that's what our minds needed to survive it. But maybe it was just a pattern, a biological algorithm, something that rewrites the body, the way truth rewrites the soul. Maybe Coates wasn't trying to kill us at all. Maybe he was trying to finish the translation. If that's true, then this is only the first draft. I found a fragment of the text in my old notes written during the blackout. I don't remember writing it. The handwriting isn't quite mine. It says, "There is a garden beyond the body. Its soil is memory. Its seed is forgiveness." Every time I read it, the letters seem to shift slightly, rearranging themselves, as if testing new forms. Last night, the vault sensors triggered again. The log read, "Containment breach, sublevel C active." I went to the elevator out of habit. The panel lit before I touched it. The lowest button glowed white. The hum in the walls grew louder, syncing with my heartbeat. I told myself I wouldn't go back down. But when I looked at the monitor beside the elevator, I saw the corridor liver on feed clearer than ever before. The hanging bodies were gone. The walls shone bright and clean. And at the far end stood the Messiah, all awake, smiling. He raised a hand, beckoning. I shut my eyes. When I opened them again, the elevator doors were open, waiting. The inside smelled like ozone and lilies. Maybe this is what redemption looks like, one last descent. Maybe goats found peace and left the door open for me. Or maybe it's just the infection finishing its work, rewriting me into something that belongs here. Either way, I can't stay in this half-life much longer. I've written everything I can remember. If anyone finds this recording, know that I tried to understand. I wanted to believe there was a line between miracle and mistake. But the truth is simpler. There never was a line. There's only curiosity and what waits behind it. I'm taking the recorder with me. The elevator hums, and the light inside is blinding, now spilling into the hallway like dawn. I can hear them on the speakers. Hundreds of voices layered together, speaking in perfect harmony. We love you. We love you. We love you. It doesn't sound cruel anymore. It sounds like home. When I step inside, the doors begin to close. I glance at the monitor one last time and see my reflection. For a second, the face staring back isn't mine. It's brighter, whole. The last thought I managed to record is a whisper I don't remember saying. He forgave us. The elevator descends. The tape runs out. That was the last entry I ever recorded. The elevator went down and the signal died. No one ever came back up. Official reports said the site was destroyed, sterilized, erased. But if that's true, why do I still receive the same transmission every night at 3:03 a.m.? A faint heartbeat through the static, and a whisper that never changes. We love you. Maybe it's just interference, or maybe it's a reminder that forgiveness doesn't always come from heaven. Sometimes it grows from the soil we buried our sins in. If you've listened this far, thank you. And if you ever find yourself deep in a jungle where the trees hum like machinery, if you come across a building made of glass and steel, standing where no map says it should be turned around, no one will believe what you find there. And if you stay long enough, you'll stop believing it yourself. This has been NightLore. Sleep lightly, and whatever you do, don't answer when the walls start whispering, "We love you."